Hello and welcome to Moneylife. This is Sucheta, Dalal. Today we are going to talk about digital transactions and how safe is our money. I've been talking in previous video blogs about grievance redress and how abysmal it is in India. When it comes to digital transactions, it is even worse. Let's start with what happened on 7th June. So, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman announced the launch of a new income tax website with great flourish. Everything is done on Twitter these days, so she tweeted that it's an important milestone to make the compliance experience more friendly for taxpayers. Well, guess what? Few hours later, her timeline was inundated with complaints. The website was slow, it was taking 15 minutes to log in, previous returns didn't show, it had wrong information on age, gender, bank accounts, and what have you. Full of glitches. We are now used to this, right? This website was set up by Infosys, which also set up MCA 21 and the GST portal, which have given a heartache to people who have to comply for years. This time, the embarrassment was huge. So within a few hours, the finance minister was on Twitter again, tweeting and directing Infosys on social media in public and saying, I see in my TL grievances and glitches. Hope Infosys and Nandan Nilekani, who's now the chairman, will not let down our taxpayers in the quality of service being provided. He, of course, tweeted back and said, acted as though it was a minor glitch which they will fix, but it's a problem, as I said, that we've got used to. We can't get things right. And then there is FASTag. Even before it was made mandatory, there was a press release from Paytm Payments Bank which talked about 2.6 lakh cases which it had helped to redress. It was a proud press release talking about the great work it did in 2020. Now, think about it. Every bank offers you FASTag, some less, some more, but multiply those number of complaints. And remember, they would have only increased after it became mandatory. So a couple of weeks ago, I drove past a toll naka for the first time, and sure enough, I was double docked on toll at one of the toll points. Took me about 90 hours, nearly 3 days, first flapping around for where to write for redress, then getting help on social media, looking at all the litany of complaints and issues that others faced, and I realized it's not so simple. Now, think about it. The government propaganda ads tell you you're going to breeze past, they use celebrities to tell you how you can breeze past toll gates, right? Yes, you breeze past them and then you take forever to fight about recovering small amounts of money. Is it really worth the effort? Independent transporters who drive taxis and vehicles just do not have the time to go through this, so they continue to pay cash and the government allows them. In fact, associations of transporters talk about the amount of money that their members have got blocked at toll gates. Now, we are not talking about tolls alone. Look at UIDA. Anyone who's had to make changes knows how long UIDA gives itself to make any changes at all. And if you are poor and not net savvy and dependent on others to do the updates for you, God alone help you. Now, grievance redress in India is abysmal everywhere. Consumer issues, property, stamps, losing money in the capital market, insurance, banks, whatever it is a nightmare. But when it comes to digital transactions, I'm going to take you through what happens because it is even worse. In fact, you have a powerful lobby of fintech companies and tech geeks who've been lobbying hard. They're very powerful today, a lot of money, lobbying hard with the government to push for digital transactions. They want, the word they use in a document of iSpirit, it's called Jind 2, is dematerialized cash. And they want credit as a hook in order to get you onto digital transactions. Now, those of us who have been forced to move into digital transactions look at it two ways. Either we are very complacent and in love with how smooth and simple it is because we don't know the flip side until we become victims, or we know what the problems could be and we are paranoid every day about every little message that comes because you wonder if your money is safe and you're poring over those alerts to see that nobody is getting at your data and your identity documents. There is not enough information on this. And while this is happening, the complaints have been rising. I'm not saying it. In fact, the government set up a new regulator under the Ministry of Consumer Affairs called the Central Consumer Protection Authority. It's brand new, set up in July 2020, with a wide range of regulatory, investigative, and adjudicatory powers on paper. Nothing much has happened as yet. But in Jan, this regulator, CCPA, wrote to the Reserve Bank of India and to the insurance regulator, pointing out to the large number of complaints that had come onto the National Consumer Helpline. So about 6,000 complaints about delays in settling insurance claims. A little bit of action is happening over there. And 2,850 complaints regarding long delays in crediting money in failed or cancelled transactions. Now this is important, and I'm going to take you through it. This is only for a short period of 9 months between April and December 2020. Thousands of complaints, no action, and that's why this new regulator writes to the RBI. There's an organization called Cashless Consumer, which works at fairness in digital transactions. I'm putting the URL over here below, and it'll be useful for you. You may want to copy it down. This organization filed an RTI to find out what happened to the letter that was written by CCPA to RBI and the insurance regulator. Believe it or not, the answer was that the RBI hasn't even bothered to reply. So we as individuals or NGOs don't get replies. Even a regulator has not received a reply. Now, while this is happening, while the RBI is not replying to the regulator, it is actually going along with banks and giving them plenty of time not to meet deadlines. In September 2019, see, the mistake all of us make is that when RBI comes up with some rules, we are delighted that it's a step forward. Actually, they don't get operational at all. So in September 2019, RBI issued elaborate guidelines which talked about transactions, failed transactions, which are not due to the fault of the consumer. Just a small number, which is not due to the fault of the user or a consumer. And said money has to be credited back in these in such transactions. They include when the communication links fail, the internet is not working, there's no cash in ATMs, the sessions are timed out, again for no fault of the consumer, or there are some other tech issues. So the money has to be credited back in 5 working days, and if it's not, there is a compensation. So there's a table of compensation for each kind of an issue, and it's about 100 rupees a day, which sounds pretty good, right? But this was to be effective October 2019. Instead, it has been repeatedly postponed. So when COVID happens, if you have a loan, there is no mercy on you except a moratorium where interest keeps accumulating. But when it comes to crediting back your money, RBI is so sympathetic to banks, poor things, they have such a problem that it's extending this deadline repeatedly. So from 2019, it's been extended all over again. The latest, again, because of the poor guys and their inability to do things in the pandemic, it has, in May 2021, it was extended once again. So no financial compensation, nothing would be given until 30th September 2021. If there is a third wave, I'm sure the RBI will be sympathetic to banks and institutions again. It has never shown such sympathy for the consumers. You know the battle that we had to fight even to stop banks from freezing your accounts for KYC. Why similar consideration was not shown to us until we had to campaign, but there you are. Now, when the regulator actively supports such delays when it comes to refunding money, you can only imagine what happens to victims of financial fraud. These are not innocent people where it's not their fault, there is a timeout, there's a tech problem, there's a bank problem. This is when somebody actually defrauds you. You are always considered to be the person who did something wrong in all these cases until you prove that it was not your mistake. But take a look at what happens. So when complaints rise, the situation is that the government gives you another regulator. This regulator is yet another toothless body. And the RBI protects the banks. Unfortunately, there is no organized data on how people are getting cheated, but the number of people cheated is rising, and we are now looking at data which is collated under a Twitter handle which uses the hashtag #DestroyTheAadhaar or /AEPS, which is supposed to be Aadhaar Enabled, but it talks about AEPS sarcastically as problems that you face by being Aadhaar enabled. We're talking about 6 months of data, and I'm giving you quickly running through a whole bunch of examples of what has been happening to people in the last 6 months. So let me start on 10th December 2020. These are all news reports in the national media. We're going to give you URLs below if you want to go and check them out for details. Now, 10th December, Times of India reported that EasyPay, an Ahmedabad-based e-wallet company, filed a complaint that some of its own agents had duped 91 customers of 18.94 lakhs. What did they do? They fraudulently obtained Aadhaar card data and fingerprints by telling these people that they will get free LED bulbs in exchange for giving their biometrics. Now, the person who did this took advantage of people who were needy and gullible. He sold the data at 150 to 300 each to cyber criminals in Uttar Pradesh, Delhi and Haryana, who then proceeded to rip off these people by accessing their accounts. What happens is, fintech geeks all over social media, the minute you post a story like this, will start trolling you and sneer at the lack of financial savvy, tech savvy, or the greed of people who fall for LED bulbs. Most of them are completely unaware of the level of illiteracy, poverty, and ignorance among the rest of India, especially our districts, villages where there is no connectivity, where there is no money. But we are forcing them to go digital because they have been touting dematerialization of cash. Yes, that's the word they use. Dematerialization of cash using credit as a hook. And this is part of a document called Jind 2.0, prepared by iSpirit.com, all under Nandan Nilekani and the people who promote Aadhaar. Now, 16 December, Times of India has another story which reported how a man in Jind was cheated of 22,000 rupees, 22,500, by using fingerprint verification at a proper point where there is fingerprint verification by cloning his fingerprints. Moneylife even has a video on YouTube about how easily this is done. 22nd December 2020, there's a story about one Mr. P.K. Srinivasan, son-in-law of well-known writer Sarah Joseph, disappeared in the Mathrubhumi in the south, had 20 lakhs vanishing from his account. This was by duplicating his SIM card. Now, duplication of SIM after having got all your access to your other bank details is become such a mainstream fraud, and there is absolutely no solution to it. So people who are technology experts will very knowledgeably tell you, oh, this is rampant. How do you protect yourself? Nobody knows, because everybody sells your data. So while the maximum that they lament is that when a fraudster blocks your phone and goes for a duplicate SIM, phone companies are not doing enough to check. But what are regulators doing? What is the redress? What is the grievance mechanism? No answers. Remember, all these cases have appeared in the media because the police actually conducted an investigation and gave it to the press. That's just part one. It's wonderful. 90% of complaints don't even reach this stage. Okay? But in none of these news reports or follow-up reports have we ever seen that people have got their money back. Because as anyone who's filed a police complaint or who has been robbed knows that the red tape and the process is so long drawn, it takes years. It's not that the money is going to be credited back. Go to the next one. 26 December, the Tribune talked about how a criminal gang had raised two-wheeler loans using Aadhaar cards of migrant workers. They told these migrant workers to hand over their Aadhaar cards, created fake documents using it, and used those to open bank accounts and take loans. Remember, if they hadn't been caught, recovery agents would have been chasing these migrant labor who have no money, and any benefits that would have been credited to their accounts could also be taken away. They had withdrawn, the fraudsters had already withdrawn over 3 lakh rupees. 22nd Jan, Telangana Today talks about how the police arrested a gang using Aadhaar and other identification documents to transfer property cards, to create fake property cards and transfer property in Telangana. Now think about how scary this is. A roof over your head and property is what Indians live for and save every penny so that they can have it. Imagine if fraudsters can just so easily transfer everything because you're not aware, everything is digital and somebody is able to access that database, and next thing you know, you have nothing and you're fighting for 10, 15 years. You can't even access courts if you're poor because it is just too expensive. Next, Jan 22, 2021, the Cyberabad police talked about a gang in Bombay which used the swim swap trick that we talked about earlier to transfer several lakh rupees using IMPS transactions out of a victim's account. The mastermind here was a Nigerian. Gang is from Bombay and doing the fraud in Cyberabad. Wonderful, isn't it? This is what technology does for you. Your access is global. 1st February 2021, the Hindu reported a GST fraud refund scam where again fake documents were created very easily using Aadhaar and bank accounts were opened. So for KYC updation, after you've proved everything, your account can be blocked. But 25 bank accounts were opened and fake documents issued to 340 firms to get fake GST refunds. 10th February, the IANS reported, and we've carried this article, that people were defrauded of 523 crore of property. Just think about what that number means. In Gurugram by 3 persons using fake identification documents and Aadhaar cards, and they got some people to impersonate the real owners by claiming that they are the owners and paid them a fee of about lakh each. And read the story. 12th February this year, India TV carries a story about how a 19-year-old in Hathras forged documents to open 10 fake accounts in top banks, ICICI Bank, IDBI Bank, Axis Bank, IndusInd, and applied for loans and duped them. They complained, they're big, their complaints get listened to. 20th February 2021, OdishaTV reported how a 35-year-old man in Balasore operating an Aadhaar card correction and center and banking kiosk stored biometric data of his customers illegally and defrauded them. The police found 100 SIM cards with him and Aadhaar cards. Now, tech giants who push for dematerialized cash refuse to address this. In fact, the poorest of people don't even get access to a bank branch. They are supposed to operate through bank mitras, bank correspondents, and there are an increasing number of cases where these banking correspondents, bank mitras, and people working with NGOs are colluding with fraudsters. In fact, the standard callous reply on social media is, well, you got defrauded earlier also. Didn't you have fake passports and things earlier? Now you have. Yes, but Jandhan or the Jam Trinity, which is your Jandhan, Aadhaar and mobile, has made it super fast. It is not so difficult as it was in the past. It happens in a jiffy and it happens to anyone. This is not how it was. Worse, that your dematerialized world is forcing people into a system that they can neither understand nor afford. Now come to other benefits, which is the reason for Aadhaar. 23rd February, the Times of India reports how a man from Bareilly, again, cloned fingerprints and used it to hack 500 bank accounts. What did he do? He used it to hack the beneficiaries of the Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Yojana, an old age pension also. Think of how sad this is. This was a nexus with the bank mitra. Okay? Like I told you before, this is how people are being defrauded. 16th March 2021, the Hindustan Times reports how the Comptroller and Auditor General caught a scam where Aadhaar numbers of students were manipulated to deprive them of scholarships. This was to the tune of crores of rupees and for a period between 2014 and 19. It said the Technical Education Department did not pay 18 crores to 7,757 students, although the amount was sanctioned and drawn from the treasury because of this Aadhaar-based fraud. This is how benefits, Aadhaar's sole purpose was to deliver benefits, right? This is how people are being cheated. 6th May 2021, the New Indian Express reported that 3 persons from Bhavani Patna had siphoned off wages of 3 lakhs from 70 road construction workers who worked for the Manrega scheme in collusion with banking correspondents and Anganwadi workers. What did they do? They got hold of Aadhaar cards and photographs of the workers on the pretext that they would help them apply for the Integrated Child Development Scheme, and they used it to open accounts, claim benefits and withdraw funds. Poor, ignorant people get cheated so easily. 20th May 2021, Times of India reports A Lucknow case where scamsters withdrew 30,000 from a bank account, again using Aadhaar Enabled Payment System by downloading his Aadhaar card and accessing his digital fingerprints. They cloned it again using thinner, glue, image booster chemicals and got thumb impressions. 7 June, the Hindustan Times reports how 45 residents of Palwal were defrauded of 1 crore using their Aadhaar numbers cloning their fingerprints. Again, they bribed revenue officials to get the stored fingerprint data. So every time you go and give your fingerprints, it's stored somewhere, and if those officials collude with scamsters, and India is a corrupt country, so it happens all the time, you can imagine you can just kiss goodbye to your money. You will notice that these reports are only about cases where police have acted, not about money coming back. So reading about them is only frightening people all the more. In most cases, you don't get your money back, and it exposes the yawning gap between tech-savvy capitals like Bangalore, where people have the latest of technology, the best high-speed internet connection, who can lobby policymakers who no longer care what happens to the poor who are victims of fraud, who will not put in place a grievance redress and compensation system. When it comes to grievance redress and compensation, I must say that the poor and the urban rich are on par. Unless you have influence, nobody acts for you. If you are a middle class, educated, urban person, you are in absolutely the same boat. Government that's relentlessly pushing for digital transactions must realize that safety of money and prompt grievance redress is absolutely a necessity when something goes wrong. Otherwise, it cannot build confidence about a digital India. In fact, it will lead to protests. I think there is a reason why usage of cash has increased so much in the country in spite of demonetization. If you agree, sign up to Moneylife as well as Moneylife Foundation and join us in our fight for our rights. Thank you.